Welcome to this very short 5-slide series. The first 2 slides will focus on 5 messages to convey to children about writing. The final 3 slides will focus on 7 writing principles for the teacher to remember. Let's begin with the first message. Students are not born as good or bad writers. Children and adults often struggle with the fear of inadequacy when they write. It's important for you to convey the message that everyone in your room can be a good writer, and that you will help them accomplish this. The next message is that writing is a struggle for all who do it. Children need to know that writing is hard work, and even professional writers typically make many revisions and edits to their work before the piece is ready for publication. A great way to make this point is to show them some of the drafts of your children's book with revisions and edits included. The third message is that reading and writing are transactions. Children often think that writing is just about spelling and punctuation. While these are important at a certain point in time, good writing is about the transaction that occurs between two people, the writer and the reader. Writing really is about thinking and feeling in an organized way and then expressing those thoughts and feelings in words. The fourth message to convey is that we need to train ourselves to be good observers. Just as good artists and photographers train themselves to be good observers, good writers have done the same thing. I like to say that skilled writers catch things. They see and they remember interesting details that add value to the written piece they're working on. My favorite way to make this point is to provide 2 tellings of the same story from your own life. In the first telling, you use few details and make use of dull and uninteresting words. For the second telling of the same story, you can point out how you'll make the story improved through the use of interesting words and details. Once you've modeled the telling of the story the second time, you can then have them partner with another student and tell about some interesting event from their life. Stress that you want them to make the story come alive by adding detail and making interesting word choices. The fifth message to convey is that skilled writers write as concretely as possible. It turns out that writing that includes generalizations and abstractions keeps us from the intimacy of a situation. Good writing is specific and includes concrete images. There is, however, one caution I'd like to offer related to this message. Children need to know that there's a time and a place in their story to add these concrete images. That place is where they most want the reader engaged. One way I like to convey the message of using concrete images is by reading aloud pieces that model this skill. Eggs, a copy of which is in your big book, is my favorite piece to do this. Sit back and listen to concrete images that make this poem come alive. Eggs. Eggs that come from chickens, squeezing oblong from their feathered bottoms. Tapered ovals, opaque with white-filled albumen. Delicate thickness. I've eaten them raw, sucking them from a pinhole carefully made in the shell. I've pressed my lips to the hole and sucked until the white carried the yolk out in one mass onto my tongue. I've beaten them and butter-fried them into spongy yellow chunks. I've left their sunny sides up until the whites were glazed like plastic, and then pricked the orange yolk with the sharp point of a fork and watched it slowly spread and ooze over the plate. Then I've sopped it up with toast until the toast was soggy and limp and dripped when lifted to the mouth. I've boiled them and listened to the click of the shells as they wobbled in the bubbling water, small sounds of thunder, shells against metal. Then I've cracked them and peeled them, pulling the residue of skin-like membrane from them, then sliced or bit into their shine of rubbery white with yellow paste center. I've lathered them into my hair with shampoo. I've mixed them with cheeses and mushrooms and onions. Today, I've bought 100 dozen of them, farm fresh, grade A, large white, New Jersey eggs in spongy gray cardboard cartons. I've arranged them around the bathroom, their cartons opened, exposing rows of gleaming white lumps. 1,200 of them. Delicate shells threaten to burst and spray yolk over tile. I choose the first and tap it lightly on the porcelain tub. A thin line shatters the cool shell. I violate the crack thumbnail first and slowly separate the shell, tearing the inside membrane with a small sound of skin and plop it into the tub. Its nucleus of yellow pops as it lands on the hard surface below, and slowly from the ragged half shell a clear string of mucus, a long thin globule, follows after it. I take the next and the next, crack each on the tub edge, and plop it to the hard surface, watching the yellow yolks break and ooze and spatter. I keep on with my work until the tub fills enough for me to watch the yolks bounce into the thick liquid, sink a little, and then buoy to the surface. When I drop at last, the 1,200th, the tub is full, and the mucilid surface is cobbled with yolks. Slowly I put one bare leg into the tub, letting the viscous mass rise up my body as I slide down in it up to my chin. I lie perfectly still, listening to the silent squish of the mass that surrounds me. I take some of the liquid and smear it into my hair and over my skin. I move and thrash my limbs about until the mixture of yolk and white is thoroughly blended. Eggs. Let's now look at 7 writing principles for the teacher to remember. The first principle for us to keep in mind is that we give children a fear of writing with excessive criticism on our part. Young children often start off as very free and creative writers until they start getting papers back with multiple comments about what they did wrong. Typically, a fear of writing comes in 2nd grade, and at this point many students develop a fear of being wrong, so they develop a safe and rigid style of writing where they take few chances. They will often imitate the work of others as well. Children think to themselves, if I'm punished when I take a risk, I won't risk anymore. We give children a fear of writing with excessive criticism on our part. Our goal as a teacher is to support the student in their effort to write. Evidence shows that encouraging what is right is much more effective than just giving negatives. Just as everyone walks a little differently, everyone writes a little differently. Give them latitude. Take a look at the 2nd principle now, if you would, please. If we are face-to-face with a person and listening to their story, we nod, we ask questions, and in general, we act as if we're an interested audience. We often want to elicit more information from them also. We aren't there to slap them down as a storyteller. As you read the writing of your students, I suggest that you pretend you're carrying on an imaginary conversation with them as you add comments to their papers. Unless you would feel comfortable saying something face-to-face with the student, that comment really has no business being written on their paper. Students really want to hear 4 things from us about their writing. First, they want to know that we read their piece and that we heard them. Second, they want to hear that we feel that they are a good writer. Third, they want to hear our thoughts and our questions about the piece they wrote. And fourth, they want to hear about spelling and grammar, but not while they're first writing the piece. Please take a look at the 4th principle. In order for writers to make themselves vulnerable, they need to be in a safe environment, and as we talked about earlier, this is something that you'll need to work at to create. Sharing some of your own writing, your children's book for example, is a great starting point for this. Once we've made ourselves vulnerable to our students, they're much more likely to do the same. Their writing then becomes honest and genuine and powerful. Principle 5 is to teach writing skills in relation to real writing, to teach the craft without killing the art. This is best embodied in the editing phase of the process writing approach. Even though your mini lesson may be fairly brief, it has a good chance of being very successful because students now have a purpose for learning the very skill that you're teaching. Because of the contextualized lesson, they want to improve their story. If children are to make meaning from their lives, they need to write about what they most care about. Ideally, your writing assignments will help them grow meaning through the use of words. Good writing isn't just show and tell, however. It's a chance to write toward insight, toward discovery. The final principle is to read to your students daily and provide daily reading and writing time. I like to make this promise to my students on the first day of class. Through making this promise, I'm sending a powerful message about how much I value the acts of reading and writing. I'm also setting them up for success by providing important practice on a daily basis. This brings us to the conclusion of this PowerPoint. You now have a few important messages to convey to your students and a few key principles to guide your instruction of writing. I trust that you'll add to this list as your teaching career unfolds. Blessings.